William Henry Harrison, the ninth President of the United States, the President who served the shortest amount of time in office. What if he survived and did not die 1 month into his term? Harrison, he had died because of pneumonia, and this is often due to the fact that he was delivering a very long inaugural address in the rain, and he didn't even put a coat on. And Harrison died of pneumonia a month later, and after his death, his vice president, John Tyler, took over. Tyler was constantly at odds with the Whigs in Congress due to his opposition to many of their plans, such as a national bank, and Tyler had also supported things like annexing Texas from the such as annexing Texas, which was an independent republic at that time. The Whigs did not want to do this because first of all, they didn't want to add another slave state to the Union, and second of all, they also feared that annexing Texas would cause war with Mexico, which it did. Harrison would have. Harrison was not as independent as Tyler. Harrison would have relied heavily on his cabinet members. Tyler, on the other hand, was very independent, and in fact, after just like a few months of his term, his entire cabinet resigned. So, yeah, and under Harrison, we probably still would have gotten Florida, but we would not have gotten Texas, and the Texas annexation would probably happen like a decade later. And also, under Harrison was elected into office because of the Panic of 1837, which was caused by Andrew Jackson's veto of the National Bank. And with the bank collapsing, that ultimately was the main cause of the Panic of 1837. And Van Buren didn't do a good job handling the issue, the panic. He didn't do a good job handling the issue. Harrison was elected because of this, and if Harrison was in office, unlike Tyler, who had vetoed countless bills passed by the Whig Congress, Harrison would have actually signed them, such as this bill right over here, which shows Tyler vetoing another bill. Here, it shows this is the National Bank. I am pretty sure that Harrison would have supported a national bank throughout his presidency, and also the Whigs would have probably won the election of 1844. I do not know if William Henry Harrison will run again, but all I know is that the Whigs were heavily divided because of John Tyler, and without Tyler, they probably would have been more unified, and the party would have collapsed a little bit later. And the main thing with Harrison surviving is, would the Civil War have still happened, or would it have happened later? I think it probably would have happened later. It still would have happened because, as you know, because of Tyler and Polk's expansionist policy, this entire map was filled out, and if you expand more and more, then that leads the issue of slavery to keep popping up. Now, Harrison would probably still expand towards the north, so the issue of Kansas and Nebraska would probably still be there, but the issue of Texas and California, as well as the New Mexico territories and these southwestern areas, would not have happened due to the fear of war with Mexico, and Harrison would have followed his cabinet's advice in that regard, unlike Tyler. So overall, because we don't have the territory of California being added to the Union, or at least not yet, we wouldn't see the Compromise of 1850, and that was what led to the Fugitive Slave Act, which was another thing that had accelerated the course of the Civil War. And also with the Fugitive Slave Act, that ultimately is what, with the Compromise of 1850, you had the Fugitive Slave Act, and you also had several territories in this area become, there's a heavy amount of contention. And without Texas or California, much of that contention would not have happened. The issue of Kansas and Nebraska with bleeding Kansas, I think, would have still happened nonetheless, and the Civil War ultimately would still have happened even without the southwestern region, and though ultimately it would have happened much later. So to recap, Harrison would have followed with the Whig Congress, unlike Tyler, and we wouldn't have gotten into Texas like we did under Polk. Under Tyler, and also he also would have signed the bills that Tyler had vetoed, and also he would have signed the Tariff of 1844, which Tyler actually signed, and ultimately Harrison would have followed through with what the Whigs wanted, and unlike Tyler, he would and his presidency would be seen as largely uneventful and it would have pretty much been forgotten throughout U.S. history. And he wouldn't be as one of the best presidents, but he wouldn't be one of the worst either. He'd be just kind of somewhere in the middle because he mostly just followed the advice of his cabinet and just did whatever the Whig Congress told him to do. So there you go. That's what would have happened if President William Henry Harrison survived and did not die in office like he actually did. So thanks for watching. Make sure you leave a like and subscribe.